Hello, everyone. Welcome to Synergita's Talentcast. In today's Talentcast, I have Mr. Sandeep Chanana with me. Sandeep is head of HR with Optimum Solutions Private Limited in Singapore. Sandeep has over 16 plus years of experience. He has a very wide range of experience working with organizations like Indian Air Force, Cognizant, IBM, Rakuten kind of companies. And currently he is with Optimum. And in his experience, he has set up processes and then run HR operations. He has experience on mergers and acquisitions. He has set up development centers and all of those things. Really a very wide experience. Sandeep, thank you very much for joining this session.
Thank you,
Look forward to talking to you.
Thank you, Shankar. Yeah.
Okay, so Sandeep, we typically do these sessions more to kind of understand as a HR practitioner from you on various HR front, as well as share it with all our viewers. So one of my first question is around the role of HR. As you know, 2020 has been completely a different year for all of us with COVID. And HR played really a very, very significant and a critical role across all the organizations, right from helping the employees shift from office to work from home, trying to bring in the business continuity and all of those things. So with that, how do you see the 2021 coming up for HR?
Right, I think very pertinent question from a business standpoint. One is the whole workplace scenario has changed globally. It's just not aligned to one single geography or one country, but this has predominantly changed across the world. So every organization is, having to mandate changes. Working remotely has become the norm, which previously at least uh, could be seen as a taboo in some companies wherein no, you can't work from home, you need to be in the office. There were banks which mandated people to, ensure that you do not even carry back your laptop and you just come empty handed to your bank and go back. So a lot of things have changed, and I think I was just reading this was a funny question which was put across: who led digital transformation in 2020? So the options were: did your CEO, was it your COO, was it your IT officer, or was it COVID? So I think all the organizations, there's been a standard response that, hey, because of COVID, we were able to get better digitally. So because be it all your standard tools across today, the kind of systems that we have, because of which HR as a function has seen a massive change. Now, the erstwhile HR of being on the floor, being with people on that has completely, we've done away with that, right? We do not sit with people anymore. You're not physically there with people anymore. You're not there to be able to listen to them, enable them directly face to face. So HR had to undergo a massive and rapid transformation to be able, successful. So, so when companies started moving towards the whole work from home scenario, HR was the first, function to set up these policies to be able to enable and enhance the whole experience of someone being able to get a laptop in their house. I know of companies which went a step ahead to set up a whole complete home office for employees, right? So we a lot of companies wanted to take those initiatives and enhance employee experience. So what COVID has done in this particular year is, while the whole business model and the whole HR transaction model has changed, it has forced us to think purely digital while enabling and enhancing employee experience, because this has given a focus towards hyper personalization, right? So what is hyper personalization? Wherein I am an employee, I stay over here in this kind of a place, I need this for myself, versus you as another employee, You stay in a different kind of a place. You have different needs, right? But if you were in the same office environment, your needs were standardized. So HR had to take that step ahead, saying that no, we'll have to work according to a personal requirement of every employee. So that whole standardization approach went across, went out of the box. That was one. You would also realize that uh, the whole idea of performance management, wherein someone had to physically see you working, someone had to get a report from you that, hey, I have done this. Someone, your manager had to, run a review that you did this, and this. You spoke like this. Your communication skills, your performance, your metrics were all defined by being productive on the job in a certain kind of environment. That process went for a toss. So there's nobody sitting. The manager is not able to see someone working. I think what I saw during this time was this period gave rise to uncalled, you know, managers without titles. A lot of leaders came across in this kind of scenario whom we didn't realize that they had such fantastic leadership qualities. You could get work done from them sitting across anywhere. So the person tells me, hey, I'm sitting in Starbucks, but I'll do it. Yeah, you gave that liberty to be able to. You're sitting wherever, I don't care, but delivery became the end point rather than an expectation that you're here at 9 a.m. You tell me that you've come to office and at 6 p.m. you're logging off, right? That concept completely went out. I think 2020 saw a lot of these changes. On the positive side, I really say that we saw a lot of leaders coming up. People who didn't undergo that standard managerial metrics that we had as a back of our mind, that you need to showcase these qualities to become a people manager, right? There were none of these qualities that we could see people from a digital standpoint, right? So how did we get leaders across on this? So we had new people. We never realized that these kind of qualities existed. We had HR transforming the whole scope of the way of hyper personalization, that every individual has an individual need rather than looking at it at a standardized function. The whole performance management process, the whole template of performance management changed. Remote engagement became uh, you know a way of life, and it's become a norm today. You don't take it as a taboo anymore that I'm working from home. But if about a year back, if working from home, people looked at you, oh, really nice, your company gives you these options. Wow, good. So it was a comparative analysis that we give you work from home. Today, working from office is like, oh, you're really working from office? Oh, that's good. So people are, that there's a whole change of perception that if you're working from office, wow, your company is good, man. You're allowed to go back to office and they're taking care of you. Versus last year, I'm working from home. Wow, your company is good. They're allowing you to work from home. So you see that whole paradigm shift in the way. And just about 6 months, this whole concept changed. March, April onwards, and then we're at the end of the year. And I think for me, this year has been the fastest year ever. I don't even know that. I just remember the new year of this year. I remember March of this year so well. I just feel that it's just about a few months back and we're already in December. My God, it's been one of the fastest years for me, at least. Yeah. Yeah, Shankar. A couple of my thoughts that I
Absolutely.
can think of. Yeah.
Okay. So, what kind of initiatives or like plan you have on 2021, Sandeep, especially driving towards performance and engagement front?
I think
Any advice for the HR folks?
so. I think one there are a few set of skills that have come up for HR in these last few months, right? And I would like to term them as power skills, right? Power skills in terms of say empathy, communication, proactiveness. These are power skills that we as HR have had to develop because all of this we were always reactive mode, right? Something happens or you define a process policy for something that is happening continuously, or if some issue comes up, then you define a solution for it. Right now, it's completely opposite. The most successful HR members in my team are the ones who are proactive, who understand that mindset of an employee and treat every employee individually, rather than looking at a standardized approach. So I think these power skills that I tell my teams, that empathy, proactiveness, communication, you have to be on top of it. Otherwise, it's going to cause havoc. It's going to cause chaos, confusion, because you're treating employees individually now, and there's no concept of a global town hall that the CEO would come and define the whole R&R, reward recognition, the whole policy. No, you do it in different ways. You're using WhatsApp groups, you're using Skype, you're using teams, so multiple forums and multiple ways that you're using to enhance, to communicate with people. And honestly, sometimes if I have to look at it, it's become a digital information overload as well. So I think that next year we really need to look, in fact, a lot of companies are doing it. We're also doing it, looking at mental health issues, looking at detoxifying from a digital standpoint, because there's an overload of digital now. It's purely digital life. People don't log off, so you're on a laptop, then you move to your mobile phone, and then you go to sleep. Morning when you get up, you first thing you check is your mobile phone, and then you shift to your laptop. So it's so digitalized. How do you and make lives better for employees? So that's something that I think we as HR need to start thinking for next year, wherein this is going to impact mental health of people. It's going to cause stress. So this is something that we need to think of very seriously. Number one, I think, on the other hand, the processes will continue to evolve, because every company is looking at how can we make our performance management process better. How do we? So companies, I'm sure, have moved. There's nothing called bucket anymore. It used to be one kind of a big concept that buckets have to be made. There's no buckets anymore. It's perform and get paid. Pay as you perform. So every individual is treated individually rather than having a standardized approach. So your processes are getting evolved, your systems are getting better. And I think next year, in fact, I propagate this big time, that is people, process, and systems. These three have to merge together, right? So your people have to align to the process, and the process and people have to align to a system, and that's heading towards digital transformation, right? We need to look at analytics. So the skills that I see HR coming up with is a lot of analytics, because you need to start looking at data to be able to define outcomes right now. And how good are our team members to look at data to define it? You keep getting a lot of queries, a lot of issues, so you start putting them into buckets or towers to be able to define how well are you doing on certain parameters, what is the month on month improvements. You start looking at numbers now. You start looking at these as sales numbers. Am I improving my sales? In the typical sales language, are you improving sales? Same way, am I improving employee experience? EX, right? So that's something that I think from a next year standpoint, these are the skills that I would want HR to have. The reason I say this is that a lot of studies are saying, in fact, there was a report by Ministry of Manpower about 3 days in Singapore, about 3-4 days back, saying that the HR roles are going to get obsolete by 2025. That's something that is coming up pretty strongly. So the kind of function that HR is going to get obsolete. A very operational HR process is completely going to go off the hook, because systems are taking over, right? And you have apps, ready-made apps, you have chatbots, you have all these functions which are able to take on a function of an HR. So you just need to go and plug in something, you go and upload data, you go and upload your reports, you go and upload your documents, somebody reviews it. In fact, the whole medical industry has changed. You don't need to go to a doctor anymore to if you're sick, right? You just go online and show a doctor and get a lot of countries are moving towards that as well. So look at, if you don't need a doctor physically to check you, how does a role of HR evangelize during this whole thought process, right? So I think HR as a function needs to move up. You need to look at systems, you need to look at analytics, while having, data has to be your core source of input and output towards enhancing employee experience. So I think we as in the HR function need to trend towards enhancing employee experience and less on processes and policies, because policy and processes are made just to standardize. So we need to look at hyper personalization, looking at enhancing EX, and that will happen through data, you know. And HR needs to understand the business models in terms of how this data or how this employee experience or how a good onboarding or how an exit is impacting my top line revenues or my bottom line revenues. Where is HR leading to those numbers? So if you're able to, look at all these, so data, employee experience, revenue. I think these are the three pillars that I would want human resources to look at very strongly, at least for the next few years, because if you're going to get stuck on the whole operations part of it, that I'm doing query management, I'm doing defining processes and policies, I think digital transformation will eat you up faster than ever. So yeah.
Absolutely, very well said, Sandeep. I think some of these power skills that you have talked about is extremely critical to actually look at it from an employee perspective. So that way, HR can put their likes on the shoes of employees and then see how they would look at it, and then naturally that can lead towards a hyper personalization on both the processes, policies, and the tools front. I
Yeah.
completely agree with you on that front. Okay,
Yeah.
good. So again, the next question is around, you actually talked about the performance management. So 2020, if you see, a lot of organizations have actually either skipped performance reviews, skipped performance appraisals in the form of, say, for example, salary revision. I think a lot of organizations really focused on the business front and then survival. So there was not many companies which did the performance salary revisions. So how do you see 2021 shaping up, and then what are all some of the tips, especially for doing the remote performance management for managers?
Right. I think rightly said by you, Shankar, that 2020, a lot of companies skipped performance management, not because they didn't know how to do it or they were not aware, but I think the business dynamics, the business scenarios forced a lot of companies to hibernate and go into a zero performance management, because at one side people are losing jobs, and there's a huge impact of the virus, which has completely hit the whole world pretty much. The retail sector, the manufacturing sector, a lot of job losses, right? The tech sector was somewhat, at least comparatively, safer in terms of these job losses, but there were many job losses. A lot of companies shut down. So performance management not happening this year was more attributable to the business dynamics, and I think employees in every organization understood this piece, that's saying that it's better to have a job rather than looking for a hike. The option was a 0% hike or a job. So the reason I say 0% hike is you want to stay or not stay. So
Absolutely.
so that was the whole idea. So I think this year has been a bit difficult for all of us, and getting a job or looking at alternate options, the jobs, it wasn't easy. I think 2021 will still, it won't be very high on this whole performance management scene, because a lot of companies will still look at stabilizing. Companies are still yet to stabilize. I think, in my opinion, companies will take advantage of the fact that 2020 was a bad year, and we can continue being bad for some time till we, get even. So I think it will. If you ask me, I don't see a fully positive trend yet going back to normal. That's something that I foresee, number one. Secondly, on managers being able to do performance management, I think that concept of managers is really getting. I don't see that value add in terms of managers doing this anymore. I think the kind of generation that we are in, like especially the talk of the Gen Zs, right? The current the youngest generation, they don't believe in performance management anymore. We have about four generations in the workforce right now. right? It's only the top two gen, at least till the Gen Ys, who believe in this whole performance management concept that I need to be rated and then I need to be paid for my rating. I think what we're seeing as a huge trend is that Gen Z don't care about a rating anymore. They don't want that. If I'm doing good, you tell me now and you pay me now. You don't have to wait for 6 months or 1 year to do that. So a lot of companies are trending towards pay now for performance, right? Or moving to a quarterly or a half yearly cycle. So I think I see those cycles compressed. And I see a lot of companies looking at retaining talent by utilizing long-term incentive plans, right? You're binding people towards a longer term because you know that the market is still uneven. We don't know how well we are going to survive. So best option is that look at long-term incentive plans wherein there's a fixed element which is keeping the employee engaged for, right? So that's something that we are doing a lot. And managers coming into play in terms of, it's going to be difficult for all the managers to be able to do this from a remote standpoint. I think there's going to be a lot of stakeholder management which will come into play, and especially if you, there's one person has got multiple stakeholders. So I think systems are going to play a very strong role here again, because it's going to be easier to seek feedback from multiple sources to be able to define a number centric output versus one person, that old adage that one person being a manager defines your career. That's over. That I don't see tech companies in that zone, at least. So the technology firms do not, very rarely have that single manager concept. So you have a lot of stakeholders you're dealing with, right from the product teams, the sales teams, the technology, back end, front end, full stack, whatever, right? You look at, so there are multiple stakeholders and the feedback. That's why I said power skills, right? Even from an employee standpoint, these power skills need to come into play, because you're looking at customer centricity out there, CX, you're enhancing customer experience, that is CX, right? So you're able to do that only if you understand the whole product cycle completely well. And managers will play a role, but I'm not really sure as to, maybe they're just going to be there for consolidation and communication, maybe. So possibly you need to have a sort of good communication skills wherein you go and inform employees that this worked and this didn't work. And I think another thing that's happening is that there is a delinkage between performance and pay. So the mindset with a lot of uh, employees is that my performance and pay go together, right? So if I'm given a certain rating, that means I get this much hike, right? So that concept is getting over. Hey, your performance is this, chapter closed, it's done. There's another conversation that, hey, this is the whole budget and how you'll be getting paid this much. So it's an individual centric effort. So I think we are trending towards that. It's going to be, it's going to rely more on systems, because individually it's going to be tough to maintain each and every individual details, or moving towards an individualized cycle. But I think systems are going to be doing a lot of jobs that the managers are able to do today. I think, yeah, I foresee these kind of effects coming into play for the year or two. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is something which we are also seeing across, say, like organizations abolishing rating, abolishing bell curve, trying to bring in 360-degree view of how an employee is performing, especially bringing in data from multiple people, bringing in data from their actual work output, and then do the number crunching, and then see how it can be more towards a development oriented inputs for the
Hmm,
employees.
hmm, hmm.
Those are some of the things which we are certainly seeing in the
Yeah.
market. Plus, you actually talked about delinking the performance and
Hmm.
pay. In a lot of organizations have kind of like moved the performance appraisal completely out of the cycle, pay
Yeah.
cycle different, performance
Yeah.
cycle reviews
Yeah.
different kind of stuff. I think a lot of such good points, and then a good experimentation
Hmm.
happening on the field with the various companies wanting to see how they can actually make it more development oriented reviews rather than the pay oriented
True.
reviews.
True, very true. I think
Right.
very rightly said by you. Development-oriented reviews, wherein you have a complete training plan defined, you have a mentoring plan defined, rather than, because the employee's mindset is, okay, fine, thanks for your feedback, how much is my pay? So the back of the
Correct.
mind is only that, okay, your feedback is done, tell me the last. So I think we are moving away from that concept, wherein I'm just talking about the development areas, the areas where you need training, development, mentoring. We are here to offer you that. You did this right, you could have done this better. This is what you need to do next. Chapter close, the whole conversation closes. And it's nothing, there's no communication or no conversation about a monetary element out here. So it's a very
Correct.
different conversation that starts sometime later. A lot of companies are moving towards this concept. Yeah.
Correct. Very good. So the next question that I have is, especially with the digital HR, how are you driving the inclusivity, and then the diversity within the workforce? How do you engage them? Those kind of stuff. Can you throw some lights on that?
Right. I think the basic thing from a diversity is basically diversity is incorporated of all the unique elements of every individual, right? There could be different genders, race, social categories, age as well. So I think there's a lot of focus on this aspect wherein our company at least we stopped looking at age as a factor. You don't really look at age and you don't ask for these kind of conversations. You're not looking at gender background. So we made a very conscious effort. I think that's very, in fact, there's a huge initiative by the Ministry of Manpower Singapore as well, wherein there's a mandated guideline wherein you are not supposed to be, asking some certain elements, like you cannot ask age, you cannot ask the racial and gender backgrounds, you can't ask social categories. You just look at a CV without as a mask. You don't know who that employee is, or you don't know who that candidate is. So that's something that's pretty positive. And I think while we look at all these diversity, inclusivity, how are we looking at a long term stay, a long term retention standpoint, a long term plan for the growth and development is what we need to start looking at very seriously as well. So while a lot of companies are doing a lot of taking up a lot of initiatives on genders, LGBT, different kinds of diversity. Diversity could be age, diversity could be racial, different ethnic groups. Inclusivity is basically having everyone across on the same platform within your same organization. I'm inclusive. We're an inclusive organization, right? We are including everybody in what, as it basically comes down to the culture of an organization. I think it's CEO downwards. It's what you percolate top down, how you're being equal in all parameters, irrespective of however diverse or what we are, but making an effort to look at all these aspects, define them with data, look at how we're improving on each data metric, and end of the day, it's all a business deliverable, right? It all needs to lead to a dollar value. So if it's leading to a dollar value, and it has shown in the past that yes, it does lead to dollar value. So we're doing a lot of programs, returning mothers, looking at people who are staying, who have been retrenched, and we're looking at giving them an opportunity without looking at the because we know a lot of people got retrenched this year, right? So you don't look at it in a negative way anymore. But just think about it a year back, if someone told you that I was retrenched, or you would immediately look at that person with a negative view. Oh, you've gotten retrenched, there could be something wrong with you, we won't hire you. Today, people are openly stating that I was retrenched, and companies are hiring people. In fact, there's so much of initiatives. I see a lot of companies telling openly in advertisements that we're looking for people who got retrenched between so and so time to so and so time. We are open to look at you first. So that was something very positive, right? As an outcome of the whole COVID scenario. So I would put that into inclusivity as well. I would put term that as a part of inclusion, that we're including people of these backgrounds as well, right?
Absolutely.
So looking at people with skills who do not, so a lot of techies could be, we have employees in our organization who are physically handicapped, but that doesn't hamper them or derail output, a deliverable for that matter. So it's just about, I don't have data, I don't have the numbers, but I think if you're able to proceed on this line with data and start showcasing our leadership and communicate with the employees that we are open, we are a culturally free, and we are a flat organization, I think these facets continue to develop as well. And I think that's again a more of a culturally driven background from an organization standpoint, which obviously HR needs to take on strongly. I don't have the data for this at this point in time, but yes, we have done some amount of initiatives around this as well.
Absolutely. Okay, very good, Sandeep. So those are some of the questions we had for this talent cast.
Great. Okay, that was good.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Shankar.